All right. Welcome back, comrades, for episode 6, Marxism and Religion.
Looking
Welcome
forward to
back.
this.
Yeah, welcome back, Max. Welcome back, Stephen.
Thank you, man. Thanks for having me again.
Glad to have you both here. So it's a pretty big topic. Oftentimes we're confronted with a question and we're confronted with people that either do or don't support religious comrades for whatever reasons, and it's important to study history on this topic, and it's also important to study the material conditions of certain areas regarding the topic, all of which we'll cover and we'll go over. Where to start, right? Like this is a big topic. So I know
in my opinion, we could start anywhere.
Yeah, I mean, I know, like, I mean, I'll get my own personal.
Yeah, let's
I'll get my own personal opinion out of the way.
Let's all do that in a row.
And then we can expound on, what Stalin and what Lenin said, but also not only that, but also what Mao said and what some other people said. And we'll kind of rehash that, and we'll figure it out. Me personally, my only criteria for supporting an individual that is a Marxist that may also be religious is, do they uphold class interests? Meaning, do they put the overall struggle of the proletariat at the forefront of their day-to-day and their Marxism? And oftentimes the views of certain religions, Abrahamic religions, will run congruent in some cases, and in other cases not so much. So that's sort of where the problem lies. Me. And the big problem with me is basically, I guess, Abrahamic religions, their outlook towards women, I guess, is really a major attack sort of on what a Marxist-Leninist or what a Marxist is overall looking after. On a certain aspect, you have to consider also that religion is sort of, we know that it's an idealist sort of fundamentalism, and that not everybody interprets religion the same way. Not everybody looks at the Bible the same way. Not everybody looks at the Quran the same way, or, whatever. So you have that variable as well, which is admittedly pretty big, for being honest with ourselves.
Yeah, man. I don't really know how to word it, but something kind of a spin-off of what you're saying here is long. This is my opinion here. Unless you want to say something more.
No, you're good.
All right. So I guess my criteria, and like, this doesn't have to like apply to people who like want to like study Marxism. But this is just kind of like a general rule of thumb that I like tend to have, is that like, is as long as like secular values are dominant in your train of thought,
sure,
and you value just like human beings instead of just like automatically like compartmentalizing people into like whether they're like a Jew or a Muslim.
Right, sure.
Yeah,
I mean, that's sort of, along the lines of identity politics.
Yeah, exactly, man. Exactly.
That's where things get lost, and that's where, you have, so-called leftists, inadvertently working against their own class interests.
Yeah.
I mean,
And
that's exactly what they're doing, and that's exactly what people are doing that play identity politics. Is they're inadvertently working against their own class interests by dividing up.
and they're exactly. They're not conscious of what they're doing.
Yeah, and a lot of times it is inadvertent, and you see it a lot in a lot of liberal circles.
Yeah, and more to this, you bringing up like Abrahamic religions. There is a major issue here because there's so much like institutional power with these churches and
Right.
like,
Yeah. I mean, there's so much dogmatism in regards to women, homosexuality. There's all sorts of things that really kind of go against the grain. But that's not that doesn't necessarily dominate the ideology. Those aspects of that religion don't necessarily dominate the ideology of a so-called religious Marxist.
Yep.
To say, we've had quite a few, we've all actually learned quite a bit from Comrade Rec, who's a religious Marxist himself, who really kind of helped me kind of gain somewhat of an idea on that. But while we're getting personal opinions, Stephen, did you want to go ahead and throw your opinion on religion and Marxism before we get into any sort of historical analysis?
Sure. Well, I think the way, like you see, liberals like Bill Maher and other spokespeople for, liberalism. Liberals.
Well, to be more specific, they're spokesperson for the bourgeoisie.
Right. Okay. Well, my point is that the way they go about combating religion, if you want to call it that in a sense, especially Bill Maher, he's a big liberal atheist, and the way he's always talking about religion, it's in very smug ways, and he does a good job at alienating, a lot of the working class that is religious. And I think that's like, as much as, a lot of Marxists are atheists, and we're trying to go, by a materialistic, view.
Sure.
And, I think it's important that, we don't alienate any of our, our religious comrades, because especially in America, they make up a gigantic part of the working class.
They make up a fair amount. In honesty, atheists are, I think, 14% of Americans right now, which is more than Jews. And
that's a lot
in America, which is a healthy, substantial amount of people.
If you guys would,
I mean, those are old statistics. Those statistics could probably actually be higher by now. But I'm not.
Well, especially with the newer generations. Yeah.
Sure.
Would you guys want to go around and share what your beliefs are?
I mean, I'm an atheist. I grew up as a Roman Catholic, and until a point where I just realized that it just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
And but yet I was at a point where I still wasn't a Marxist. I was still a liberal, and I knew things weren't right. I knew something wasn't right with our system and how we do things, but I really never had any answers or had any points of reference. And until I started reading about the history of the USSR and other socialist countries.
Yeah.
What
about you, Steve?
I'm also an atheist.
Okay.
Yeah, my family did grow up to be all Baptists, Christians, whatever they are. I'm not too familiar with it anymore. But
yeah. I personally, I'm not an atheist. However, I haven't been to church in probably like 7 years. Besides like holidays and stuff. Like I went to
I get it.
Like church for Christmas, but
I get it. I used to do that.
I can't come to terms with calling myself an atheist. I don't think I ever will call myself an atheist. I'm like kind of like I guess culturally Christian influenced, and I'm an agnostic, That's pretty much the extent of my like.
And then there's that whole conversation between atheism and agnosticism.
Yeah.
Well,
Which
to my understanding, atheism is the absence, of any religion or any type of
actual realistic.
Exactly. It's not any form of,
My gut tells me, there is something out there. That's what my gut tells me. Like
what's out there.
Yeah, like
I'll tell you
when you really think about it, my brain is telling me where the fuck did the Big Bang come from? Why is nature so fucking beautiful?
But to go.
But so I try to just come to terms and just say, you know what, I'm semi-spiritual.
And this is, and I get that, but the further we envelop ourselves ideologically in dialectical and historical materialism, and we begin to study its history, we begin to know that all things are in fact knowable, that nothing is unavoidable of truth.
Yep.
I mean, let me share a piece, a small part from Stalin from December 1901. He says, the working class is not the only class that is groaning under the yoke of the czarist regime. Groaning are the many millions of Russian nonconformists who wish to believe and worship in accordance with the dictates of their conscience and not with the wishes of the Orthodox priests, but the demands of the students for freedom and education, for non-interference in internal and university life, are too narrow for the broad social movement. To unite all the participants in this movement, a banner is needed, a banner that will be understood, cherished by all, and it will combine all demands. Such a banner is one inscribed, overthrow the autocracy. Only in the ruins of the autocracy will it be possible to build a social system that will be based on government by the people and ensure freedom and education, freedom to strike, freedom to speech, freedom of religion, freedom of nationalities, etc. Only such a system will provide the people with the means to protect themselves against all oppressors, against the grasping merchants and capitalists, the clergy and the nobility. Only such a system will open a free road to a better future, to the unhinged struggle for the establishment of a socialist system. And all I can say is red salute, Comrade Stalin. That's some fucking fire right there.
That's some fucking fire right there.
Now, that is some serious fire.
So, I don't really know the direction of this podcast here, but I'm kind of thinking.
I mean, ultimately, though, as far as my ultimate, opinion, despite the fact that I'm an atheist, we look at different areas, okay, and we observe different material conditions, and we, accordingly support or don't support a people based on that, right? Based on what they have within their means. And like, we look at a country like Lebanon and the Communist Party of Lebanon. Well, they support Hezbollah.
Yeah, they're Shia.
And so, we obviously support that country and that party's resistance to an illegal occupation that's only, miles away.
And that goes with Assad as well. He's an Alawite, which is
and right now, and that's another topic of concern that we may revisit is the YPG in northern Syria.
Yeah, we could talk about that at the end of this.
But ultimately, I'm of the opinion that, like these groups, is so long as they put class interests at the forefront of their movement, which most often they do. And most often infantile leftists, don't realize the fact that they are putting their own class interests first, because they're literally fighting for their own survival, and they're doing it in a secular way.
Yeah. And that's Assad as well. Assad's party, the Ba'ath Party, is very much. I mean, they're the only entity in the Syrian war that respects.
And Hezbollah and the Syrian Communist Party actually support Assad.
Yeah, I mean, I did a pretty extensive research paper on Syria like a month ago, and I mean, there's so many groups that were fighting in Syria at the peak of the civil war, and Assad's government was the only entity that supported Christians, Shia and Sunnis, Yazidis. I mean, he supported everyone,
There's also a group, the Communist Party of Lebanon has formed a group to protect the border. And they were like, we're different from Hamas in that anybody can come here and help us.
So, do we want to touch on religion in current countries today, like Cuba and the DPRK, Laos?
I mean, we can go there. I mean, it's religion in the DPRK is certainly, it's a secular country. There's Christian churches in the DPRK.
Yeah. Just pulling up some quick statistics here. Over 60% of Cubans are Catholic. Obviously, I don't think the Vatican, though, has much sway over politics in Cuba. So, I mean, you could say that 60% are Catholic, but I mean, at the end of the day, Cuba has secular goals.
Sure.
They're not a theocracy by any means.
No.
I think that's a good example right there of like what it means to like. Okay,
and that's what we have to understand too when we evaluate Stalin's assessment, or we evaluate Yamelan Yaroslavsky, who was the founder of the League of Militant Atheists. He was one of the founders of the people that were there to eradicate religion in the USSR. And again, I mean, you have to understand a lot of that stems from the ownership of private property.
Yeah.
And
there's so much institutional power behind,
and so much influence over the peasant class.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much what you had. I mean, you had an extravagant wealth divide between rich and poor in Tsarist Russia.
Yeah.
And the church had a lot of money and a lot of wealth, and the people had shit, and they were dying of disease, starvation, hunger, fucking everything else you can think of. And so that's why religion was one of the first on the list. But if we're going to apply a historical analysis, we also have to consider that after World War II, Stalin relaxed all that on religion.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, he did. It was due to, to bring the Russian proletariat back together, to not cause any divide. And yeah, I mean, he had to rebuild a third or a quarter of his country. And that was able to be done because, he didn't have to fight a war against the Orthodox Church at the same time. But
so I mean, you could really say, under socialism, while we still have religion, we could definitely use it, for socialist goals per se, just like how, capitalists use it, under capitalism.
Oh, sure. Sure. And even Pope Francis said the only true Christians are the communists.
Yeah.
The only true people that behave as Christians are the communists. And
there's a funny saying out there that Jesus was a socialist.
Yeah, well, yeah. Many people say that Jesus was the first socialist. You can take a lot of what he said or claim to have said, and you can get that totally.
There's definitely
he wasn't a capitalist. You can be sure of that.
Well, the reason I don't like calling Jesus a socialist, because Jesus has also told people, it says in the Bible about how to treat your slave, how to do this with the slave. So it's pretty contradictive, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, there's it's the Bible. There's a lot of class antagonisms in there, obviously.
Right.
That a lot of socialist type shit.
There's a pretty notable excerpt that I'll never forget. It's from the Bible.
Yeah.
It's something along the lines of like, if you see your neighbor struggling, like give your entire wealth to your neighbor to survive. It's something along those lines.
Right.
Just like, solidarity with your neighbor and helping him or her out when in need.
Right.
It's fun to nitpick that stuff because like you're right, like there is so many.
Yeah, there's a lot of horrible shit there too. Yeah.
Yeah. Then again, it is the Bible.
But in the end, I ultimately support religious comrades that uphold our class struggle and put it at the forefront. So, I can't not do that.
Yeah.
In real life, in the workplace, I've worked with anarchists before because it's them or even more liberal people than them, that don't even have any sort of class conscience. So you take those things into consideration and you work with what you have and you try and expand upon what you have the best you can. And I think that's what we're doing.
Oh yeah. You could say that religion could be a hindrance to like revolutionary potential in the proletariat. But I think that's the case now, but I don't think it's because people believe in God that revolution is hindered. I think it's like the institutional power that these churches hold. And like it's definitely like connected with class, with these like very, very powerful religious institutions. Right. That's what hinders revolutionary potential. It's not that people believe in God.
Right. No, I agree with that because, history, has shown, plenty of revolutions to happen, under, religious people.
Like Jason, like you said, like the first target after the Bolshevik Revolution was the Orthodox Church because they held a fuck ton of power over the peasants.
And they held a fuck ton of land.
Yeah. Exactly. They're just using.
But it is an interesting case though, the way religion is displayed, especially in American politics. It is identity politics at its finest,
It is identity politics, and it's often played by the right in America, which is
it's really in depth with the nationalistic type of wing, especially that's going on right now. Yeah. They the right wing they use it to their advantage. That's for sure.
I believe there's a party in the DPRK called the Changu Party. Is anyone familiar with that?
I am not.
No.
Well, apparently they hold 22 seats out of 687 in the Supreme People's Assembly, and it's basically it's a secular party. However, it has a lot to do with this religion called like Chandoism, which means religion of the heavenly way. So I mean, religion does exist in DPRK.
Sure.
However, it's not. I mean, like you said, it's a secular country at the end.
Yeah, it is. It's totally a secular country, and
yeah, exactly.
Right. At the end of the day, religion isn't something that is brought up when they're discussing how to run the country, issues of
Yeah.
Unlike other countries like America.
And I think it should also be said that like okay, I was raised a Christian, but I think one has to admit. I mean, it's impossible not to see that like every religion is like an exploitive kind of like institution of just like taking money from people, fucking tax free.
It's all about exploiting ideology, exploiting
and just scraping mind every day.
And that's the problem.
That is the problem, and like
it alleviate for religious people. Thy will be done. You have to admit that. Like there's nothing that they can do. It's all out of their hands, no matter how stupid and fucking dumb they are. Everything is all under the control of some sky.
And I think that should be stressed too.
Deity.
And I don't mean to be in. That sounds insulting, and I apologize, but I mean that's just my personal belief. You know what I mean? I just think that things are more materially grounded than what a religious person might think. But that doesn't mean I don't support them. It doesn't mean I don't help them. It doesn't mean I don't work with them. I totally do, and I totally would, and I have.
Oy vey.
But I'm not sure. Stephen, did you have anything else to add? I'm not sure, Max, if you had anything else to add. But
unless you have any other like talking points in mind.
I think we fairly well covered history and current material analysis.
I'm trying to think. We talked about Cuba briefly, DPRK. What notable quotes in the past, our personal opinions.
Sure. Yeah, I think we hit all the bases.
Yeah, man.
So
I'm glad we touched on this. This is something that
I'm so glad. And you know what? We may come back. We may come back and talk about it more. Any viewers out there, let us know what you think about it. Hit us up in the comments. Let us know what you think.
Yeah.
Maybe we got something wrong. Maybe we got it all right. Who knows? Let us know.
And if there's an extra talking point that we should talk about, then we should definitely address that.
Sounds good.
Oh yeah.
All right. Thanks a lot, comrade Stephen, Max, and everybody else. Thank you all for coming out.
Yeah, man. Have a good day.
All right.